Relax and listen to the voice. Hello and welcome back again to every single one of you. It's been a long time, but we're back again with another installment of Bloody Bits. Bloody Bits Volume 5. This is one of our personal projects of love, as we get to showcase authors that are unknown, or as we like to say, underknown. We feel that these authors should have a bigger, brighter light shining down upon them, and we hope that with your help, we can all play a role in getting that light shone upon them. We're doing something different with this installment. We found a short story that we really liked, which is called The Giggle Chamber. When we contacted the author, Marlin Chetty, not only did the author give us permission to use the story, but also gave us a trove of additional versions and additional pieces in this little universe. Due to the vast amount of information, and because we enjoyed it so much, we are using this installment to highlight the work of Marlin Chetty. And with that, here we go. The Giggle Chamber. They say every tragedy begins with someone laughing. That's how I open my statement. The detective gives me a look that lives somewhere between pity and paperwork. The room smells of burnt coffee, old carpet, and that faint metallic aftertaste that you get when blood tries to pass as disinfectant. Amber light hums through the blinds. Dust hangs in the air like applause that forgot to stop. Relax, he says. You're not the one on trial. I give him a short customer service chuckle. You'd be surprised how often I hear that. He presses record. The red light blinks. A tiny accusation. Before the clubs and the crowds, there was a house where we never cried. Mum said tears made ghosts jealous, so we laughed. At funerals, at breakups, at bills we couldn't pay. I was 5 when my father slipped on black ice. Mum stood over him and laughed so hard her voice cracked like the pavement under his head. That sound stitched something in me, a thread that never stopped vibrating. I learned early that laughter is cheaper than grief. It started, I tell him, with a chuckle. The club was called the Giggle Chamber. Bad omen, but a decent bar. Neon sputtered outside, casting red and blue across faces that wanted to forget their day jobs. Inside, the walls were painted black, but you could still see the water stains underneath, like old bruises showing through makeup. The mic smelt of nerves and mint gum. That first night, someone cracked a joke about penguins or politicians, the usual sort. The crowd laughed in unison. People-pleaser kind of laughter that says, "We're fine, honestly," watched from a bar nursing a warm beer. When the comedian left the stage, the applause died, but the laughter did not. It stayed in the room like smoke after a fire. Soft at first, barely there, then clearer. The bartender wiped down glasses and hummed along to it, thought it was the speakers. The manager checked the sound system twice, but I heard it clearly, underneath everything, a chuckle that didn't belong to anyone. I walked to the stage. Empty now. Just the microphone stand and a stool with a wobbly leg. The laughter seemed to come from the floorboards, or maybe the walls. I touched the mic. It was warm. Behind the bar hung a yellowing poster from an old comedy tour. In small print, "Fear and farce share a punchline." I used to think it was clever marketing. Now I think it was a warning. The detective tilts his pen. "You're saying laughter spread?" "I'm saying it evolved."
A week later, I was back on stage.
Different crowd,
Same hunger for distraction. I told a story about my mother.
about black ice and cracked voices.
They laughed nervously at first, unsure if it was loud.
Then harder, and then
too hard. A woman in the third row couldn't stop.
her friends patted her back and handed
Handed her water. She doubled over,
gasping between convulsions. The laughter twisted.
twisted into something else. Something wet. She slid off of her chair.
Security carried her out, still giggling, tears.
streaming down her face. The rest of the audience watched, frozen.
Then someone in the back started laughing.
And then another. Within seconds, the whole room was howling. Not at my joke, but at her.
I stood on stage and felt it, that hum beneath the sound, the nervous laugh. It smelt of static and perfume testers, panic dressed in polite clothes. A man keeled over, mid-chuckle, at the 6 o'clock news 2 days later. His chest still jolted when the paramedic zipped the bag. I smiled along when I saw it online. You have to. Silence gets you noticed. Didn't that strike you as odd? The detective asks. Everything's normal if it's popular. Then came the contagious laugh. It traveled quicker than rumor. People caught it on buses, in lifts, during moments of silence. So seemly, a stranger's grin could expand your lungs. The media, unusually in agreement, called it the joy plague. Couples who hadn't spoken in months started wheezing together. Some posted pics in panic, hashtag for better or worse, then waited for likes that never came while the chuckles kept going. Teachers collapsed mid-lesson. Students smirked in the surprising silence. A funeral went viral when the priest slipped on wet grass. The mourners clapped for 5 straight minutes. The mayor live-streamed herself laughing for 6. When she finally gasped, "Please stop recording," no one did. The detective folds his arms. "And you? Did you catch it?" "I was born with it." He frowns. "What kind?" "The quiet one. The sort that looks like control. The one that grief wears to work." He hesitates, and the tape hums. "I call it the silent laugh. It sounds like relief, feels like drowning. It's what happens when a scream learns manners." I lean back in my chair. For the first time since we started, my hands are shaking. I press them flat against the table, but they won't stop. There's a moment right after the laughter dies when your body forgets who it belongs to. Your lungs still remember the rhythm. Your heart doesn't. That's where I live, in that pause. The detective watches my hands. I pull them back into my lap. He says nothing. Good. Silence is the only honest audience. He slides photographs across the table. Mouths open, mid-laugh, eyes all wrong. Recognize anyone? I point. That's the Chuckle, blue jacket. That's the nervous one. You see her hands? And then that's the contagious one, center frame. We ran facial recognition, he says. There's only one person in every photo. I smile, but it takes effort this time. You don't say. You were on stage. I was. So were they. He closes the folder. 48 dead. 48 set free. That's not funny. Neither was their laughter. A twitch flickers at his mouth. A single chuckle escapes. The mirror breathes back the sound, stretching it. He touches his throat, a touch too late. You shouldn't laugh in small rooms, I whisper. They say the tape corrupted there. The laughter distorted into something liquid, and underneath was a whisper. Help me. The report calls it mass psychogenic illness. TikTok calls me the laughing man of Block M. I call it feedback, the viral kind. They moved me to isolation, where guards wear headphones that play Rain. Doctors hum children's songs as they walk the corridor, and yet, still, their shoulders shake. They always pretend it's a cough. You want truth? They were all mine. Every single one. The chuckle opened the door. The nervous filled the cracks. The contagious made sure everyone heard. The silent waited underneath them all. It wasn't joy, it was need. A plea for someone to listen to grief without remixing it as comedy. Behind my eyes, scenes replay in wandering visions. Moonlit confession rooms, shifting walls, shows that never end but change sets each episode. You'd like them, Detective. They're darkly funny. They send a new interrogator. Young, fresh. The sort who still believes empathy is sterile. He brings tea that he won't drink. Do you feel remorse? Of course. Every time someone laughs, I hear it. He stops the recorder. Then what do you want? I lean close enough for my breath to fog the glass. To hear silence again. He laughs, a reflex, a habit, then catches himself and leaves. The light flickers amber, then white, while dust floats like ghosts, taking their unwelcome bows. I open my mouth, but no sound comes. Some laughs are better left unheard. The footage ends there. The side laugh. They built a storage loft above the interview room years later. Boxes of unsolved cases stacked beneath the same flickering light. Sometimes the guards swear they hear laughter from up there. Soft, almost polite, like someone trying not to interrupt. They checked once, found nothing but dust and the faint smell of burnt coffee. Still, No one stores anything there now. They call it the loft room. Not a laughing matter, really. Unless you know the joke. The last laugh under the bed. Fragment 9, recovered footage. Silence, again. They said the valley was already quiet when the rescue team arrived. Not the normal late-night quiet either. The kind that makes your ears do that stupid thing where they start listening for a problem. Wind was gone, birds too. And there wasn't even that faint hum of static that clings to disaster sites. The hiss you usually blame on busted radios, half-dead power lines, nerves. None of it. Just one sound. A breath caught between inhale and apology. On the tape, it plays backwards, a single giggle rewinding itself into nothing. The engineers called it anomalous laughter decay. The priest who came with them didn't bother with a label. He just whispered, "It's trying to forget itself." What they didn't know was that they weren't at the end of the story. They were standing at its beginning. They just hadn't realized it yet. Somewhere beneath the dust, under a child's bed that hadn't been moved in years, something small and patient whispered. It lightly lifted the floorboards, like it was checking if the world was finally paying attention. Finally, someone who listens. Then the silence smiled. Fragment 8. The bed breathes. The footage begins 13 hours earlier. A phone flashlight sways through the ruined house, light trembling across wallpaper that's peeled itself into smiles. Every time the lens passes the bed, the audio glitches. A soft inhale follows, and then a sound like someone remembering to laugh. Too late. Field note. Timestamp 2:13 a.m. No visual anomalies, only respiration. The floorboards are moving as if the house is dreaming or pretending to. They lift the mattress. They find nothing until, pressed into the wood beneath, the faint impression of hands appear, too small to reach that far down. One of the rescuers puts his ear to the floor and stays there a bit too long. He says he hears a heartbeat, while the others say it's breathing in reverse. Neither speaks much after that. Not properly. By dawn, the bed has sunk 2 centimeters lower, as noted in the team's log report. That file remains closed. No one listens to the playback long enough to notice the whisper at the end of the recording. A child's voice, soft and hopeful. "Can I come out now?" The sound cuts off halfway through now, like something exhaled halfway into existence, and from somewhere deeper beneath the house, the silence exhales back. Fragment 7. The Last Fair. The broadcast cuts in mid-laughter. It's a wall of sound at first, distorted, bright, too human to be alive. Static devours syllables until only breath remains. Field Memo 7. The recording predates Fragment 8 by 6 hours. Audio unverified. Keep speakers low. The footage flickers. Lanterns sway. The square glows with festival color, yet every face looks rehearsed. 1,000 smiles trembling under one spotlight, like they practiced in mirrors. "Louder!" the mayor calls, voice breaking through feedback. "Feed the joy!" Children obey first. Their laughter comes out thin, almost metallic, like wind chimes made of teeth. Adults follow, each sound overlapping the next until rhythm becomes pulse. The ground vibrates and the cup on the baker's stall hums in sympathy, like it's joining in without being asked. Mira stands near the fountain, hands pressed over her ears. The camera doesn't find her until later, a small stillness at the edge of hysteria. The priest raises a microphone shaped like a cross. "We remember the silence, so we must never hear it again." And the crowd erupts, roaring their obedience. But the film stock seems to sweat. Frames blur. A ripple passes beneath the cobblestones, as if something underneath is laughing back, quietly, with manners. Then a sharp splice, a missing second. When the image returns, the square is empty. The speakers emit one slow inhale, reversed, followed by a child's voice.
"Shh! It can hear you!"
End of transmission. No one questions why the time code now runs backwards. They should have. They really should have. Fragment 6. The Child Who Wouldn't Laugh. By the time anyone asked about the girl, the tapes had already been sealed. Someone labeled them Exhibit Emotional Contagion Minor, as if feelings were small enough to store in plastic and put on a shelf, neat and harmless. The footage shows her at the edge of the crowd, not moving. She's 9, hands folded, eyes calm in a sea of hysteria. Her silence glows, the only thing still in frame. When the mayor yells, "Keep it fed," Mira's gaze shifts towards the stage lights. Her lips part, not to laugh, but to listen. What she hears is not joy. It's the floor beneath their feet, sighing in exhaustion, like it's had enough. Later, witnesses describe the moment differently. Some say the lights flickered. Others claim the crowd's laughter changed key, slipped from human to something wetter and heavier. The sound recorders, though, caught the same thing every time. That's the annoying part. A pause, just half a second long, before the entire crowd burst into laughter so loud the air itself distorted. Investigators note: "We found her mother clutching a bell anklet. When shaken, it made no sound. Every other bell in the valley still rings." Mira never returns home after that night. Beneath her bed, the wood remembers the pressure of her knees, as if someone knelt there, listening, waiting for a reply. The next morning, her room smells faintly of dust and ozone. The windows open. The curtains move like lungs. And if you turn the volume high enough on that last frame, you'll hear a small giggle, drawn out, reversed, like a memory rewinding itself to where it began, or where it wants to begin. The timestamp freezes at a point that reads 000001. The moment silence starts to breathe. Fragment 5. The Ritual. The historians insist this was the start of it, though by now we know it was closer to the middle of an ending. The footage opens on a calendar, every square stamped with the same word, laugh. They call it the laughter season, a civic holiday, a civic obligation. Every October, the priest blessed the speakers and a baker shaped bread into grinning mouths. It was meant to keep the valley's echoes sweet. Only this time, the microphones picked up more than sound. A sub-hum buried under the applause, as if the ground were laughing first, before anybody gave it permission.
Curator's Note 31. Frequency 13 Hz, identical to heartbeat or floor vibration. Reclassified as folkloric anomaly. Not evidence.
The video pans over children clinging ankle bells, adults forcing smiles, the mayor's speech cut short by a shriek of feedback that somehow resembles applause. The air ripples. The crowd hears it as joy. Mira hears it as hunger, and she hates that she's the only one hearing it properly. Her mother's hand squeezes hers. Laugh, love, laugh, or the dark will hear you. And the girl does. Once. A thin, reluctant sound. The waveform spikes, distorts. The crowd cheers, never noticing their echoes returning half a beat late, slightly lower, like voices dragging chains through laughter. Someone in the control booth whispers,
Do you hear breathing?
Then the lights bloom white. The image freezes. A fragment of sound remains. A sigh, inverted into a giggle, a door creaking closed. No one realizes the ritual they filmed was not to protect them from the dark. It was to remind the dark where they lived. The timestamp ends at 23:59:59. Everything after that plays in reverse. Fragment 4. The Echo. The town blamed the air first. They said it was thinner that year, easier to mistake a gasp for a giggle. The air was only repeating what it had been taught, which is sort of the whole problem, isn't it? Every morning after the fair, the valley echoed with delayed joy. Laughter bleeding from radios that weren't switched on. The kettle snorting at breakfast. Pipes snickering behind the walls. People said it was the wind. The wind said nothing. By the third day, laughter stopped waiting for human mouths. It moved through objects. Spoons rattling like applause. Laundry snapping itself into grins. Even the tap, dripping like it had a punchline and was proud of it. A newsreader tried to deliver a safety bulletin and started choking on her own chuckle. Local broadcast, fragmented audio.
Stay joyful. Do not engage with unapproved laughter. It may mimic loved ones.
Children began speaking in jokes they didn't understand. Old men wheezed through smiles until they went still, faces fixed mid-punchline. The priest insisted it was collective hysteria. Mira called it payback in stereo, and she didn't even say it like a joke. She watched as the family portraits along her wall began to tremble, frames rattling like teeth. The smallest one, her father's, tilted and whispered,
Why so serious, little love?
She backed away. The floor giggled beneath her toes. Something underneath was practicing, like it had time and patience and a plan. That night, she hid under her bed, not to escape it, but to listen. What she heard wasn't laughter. It was the echo trying to remember what silence sounded like. And then, softly, a new sound joined it. A reversed whisper, the same voice that the rescue team would later record.
Thank you for the silence.
For a moment, she almost answered. Then the floor sighed, like it was relieved to be heard. Outside, the town's laughter rose again, hollow and bright, like a carnival marching backward through fog. Fragment 3. The Meeting. The council met at dawn, though by then the sun had stopped showing up on time. Its light arrived 10 minutes late, stretched thin, as if reluctant to touch the town. Inside the hall, someone had turned off the loudspeakers. They didn't trust their own echoes anymore, not even in a meeting where echoes are sort of the point. Council recording number 003, partially erased. Voice of the Mayor.
We ban laughter for safety.
Voice of the Priest.
You can't ban sound.
Voice of the Mayor.
Then we'll call it silence management.
At the end of this recording, there seems to be a brief portion of laughter. Human, unconfirmed. The room hums with the kind of fear that smells of paperwork and sweat. A teacher volunteers to monitor the schools. A baker suggests pre-recorded chuckles piped through the town radio to keep morale stable. Someone else coughs and it sounds like a laugh, and everyone pretends they didn't hear it. No one notices the floorboards swelling like lungs beneath their feet. Mira sits in the corner, knees drawn to her chest. Her mother's hand on her shoulder, tight, protective, and shaking. They think you started it, her mother whispers. Mira stares at the cracks along the wall. I didn't start it, she says. I just stopped feeding it. A silence follows that sounds almost polite. Then something knocks from below, 3 times, slow and deliberate. The priest crosses himself. It's just the pipes, but the camera catches his leg trembling, which is inconvenient. From outside, a low chuckle rolls through the earth. The council microphones record it even after they're unplugged, like the building refuses to stop taking notes. Each tap of a gavel syncs with it, a rhythm forming, something steady, ancient and amused. Motion denied, the mayor says, though she never raises her eyes again. The recording ends with a single phrase whispered by an unknown voice, overlapping all others.
We have to survive, don't we?
Static. Faint applause from somewhere under the floor. Fragment 2. The First Sound. The night it began was unremarkable. No storm, no omen, just the valley breathing through its windows. The only person awake was a girl named Mira, sitting cross-legged on her bed with a torch and a storybook she didn't like. She laughed once because the villain's name was silly, and her laughter felt too loud in the quiet house, embarrassing almost, so she clapped a hand over her mouth. That's when the mattress lifted, barely, and dropped again, like something underneath had also laughed, or wanted to. Audio recovered from floor mic. Time signature 000003. Her mother called from the next room, voice thick with sleep. "Mira, is everything all right?" "Yes, Mom." But she was lying. The silence under the bed had already learned her rhythm. Each breath she took, it took half a beat later. Each heartbeat echoed faintly in the wood. When she whispered good night, the echo answered first. Not a word, just the shape of one. And if the rescuers who found the tapes could hear that fragment clearly, they might notice the laugh beginning. Slow, careful, as if testing the sound of being born, like it's trying on a mouth. Then the recording snaps. Time runs forward again. The silence opens its mouth, and the world, obedient, unsuspecting, laughs. The punchline, not a laughing matter. This is an addendum to the investigation told at the beginning of this recording.
The files did reveal that they once brought in a sound engineer to study the tapes. He claimed laughter has frequencies, too low for hearing, too high for mercy. On one recording, buried under the usual distortion, he found a single note that shouldn't exist. It sat between a sob and a snare drum snap, repeating every 13 seconds. He played it for the warden, who laughed until he bit through his tongue. The engineer deleted the file and moved overseas. He then sniggered, triggering a serious smile. And yet, these days, sometimes when a comedian dies on stage, radios in the vicinity pick up a faint static pulse, like an applause warming up. As stated by the official stamp, this was not a laughing matter. Unless it is, someone once whispered with an ominous wink.
Thank you all very much for tuning in to this installment. We would like to extend the biggest thank you possible to Marlin Chetty for allowing us to use his wonderful, mysterious, sprawling story. Thank you, Marlin. This is an amazing piece of work. We hope that you all agree. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember to have
Sweet dreams.